Well, hey, welcome to another episode of the Christian Underground podcast. I'm so happy that you guys are joining me today. This is a gentleman that I've been really excited about having on our show for a long time. And what he talks about is near and dear to my heart. It's something that I've probably been focusing on for ever since I got into counterterrorism. And I understood the connection between counterterrorism and human trafficking. And I was a part of a church that really was involved in rescuing people down in the dumps in Mexico and helping people in getting out of sex trafficking in Nepal. And so this is something that's very important to me. But before we start, I wanted to say a few thank yous. I wanted to say thank you to all of the subscribers that have been subscribing to the Christian Underground podcast, who've been coming either from Nick's show or from Chris's show from Camp Hermon, from also from Paul Staub's show. Big shout out. Thank you so much for coming. It means a lot to me, but also I want to say thank you to everyone who sent kind words about my mother passing. It's been a huge just built me up incredibly. We are still working on the funeral arrangements for her, so keep us and our family in your prayers as we move through this. But without further ado, I wanted to say again, thank you guys so much. And now I would like to introduce you guys. Go ahead and say hello to Mr. Jason Pillow. How you doing, Jason?
I'm good, man. How about yourself? And by the way, you have mine and my wife's sincere condolences about your mom.
I appreciate it. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. My mom was a big fan of the show. So,
That's awesome.
and I know that she would love to be hearing this story. She was she was really kind of the person who turned me on to a lot of this stuff. So it just awesome. Well, Jason, man, we're just going to go ahead and jump right into this. So go ahead and tell me, or let our listeners know a little bit about what you're doing right now, who you are. Let them know about your ministry, and then we'll get deeper into the story.
All right. Well, my name is Jason Pillow. By trade, I'm a security contractor, executive protection work, schools, whatever the security contract calls for. My other professional trade is my wife and I specialize in human trafficking outreach, rescue, and rehabilitation. Me and her both were victims of it as children, her on the traditional side, me on the non-traditional, which we can get into, expound on that a little bit later. So my biggest thing now is we are rebuilding our American network for the ministry right now. So our goal is to have effective teams active in every state that are interconnected with each other. That way, nothing falls through the cracks on any sort of investigation we are doing, because our goal is not only to rescue the victims, it's also to take down these networks one brick at a time, if not just destroy the whole wall and move in.
Wow. And that's why I wanted to have you on here, is because I know that human trafficking is becoming a big issue for some people. I know that we people are becoming more aware. So tell us a little bit, about the issue of human trafficking, especially here in the United States. Like what's some of the numbers that maybe people could learn about?
Well, let me put it to you this way. Every year, Child Protective Services loses 400,000 children from foster care. These children are reported as runaways. However, about 95% of them are actually taken and put into trafficking networks, or they are taken and have their organs harvested, which is another form of human trafficking. Some of them are sold into sex slavery, prostitution. Some of them are sold into indentured servitude. Some of them are placed into the porn industry only to be later executed and have their organs harvested. and most of them are children. We're talking 15 and under. And your average lifespan for one of these children is about 2 years once they're in the trafficking network. And like I said, 400,000 is a low number estimate just from CPS. There are closer to 750 to 800,000 children within the foster care system that disappear, vanish without a trace every year. And it is our contention that the vast majority of them are ending up in trafficking in one form, fashion, or another. I mean, human trafficking now, a few years ago, it was a $28 billion a year industry. Then it jumped up to 42. Now we're looking at about $148 billion a year industry in child and human trafficking.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people, when I was working in the nonprofit industry, a lot of people didn't realize that that human trafficking is outpacing, is set to outpace it's international arms and probably drugs here pretty soon.
It's already outpaced the drug trade.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It just
And
accomplished that last year.
wow. Well, and then on top of that, you know, you have a lot of people in kind of a social justice type environment, who are interested in social justice, and they're good-hearted, and they're interested in race relations, things like this, and they ridicule slavery and they ridicule these things, but they don't realize there are actually more human slaves today than there were at the height right before the Civil War. And even in the United States, where slavery is illegal, we're
Well,
seeing that number even rise.
thing about it is what most people don't realize, especially in the realm of child prostitution and child trafficking, America is the number one consumer in the world of child pornography.
Mm. Yeah, it's pretty blatant. I worked for a woman. I don't know if you're aware of her work. Her name was, she went on to be with the Lord about around 2020. Her name was Dr. Judith Reisman, and she worked at she started and created the Child Protection Institute out of Liberty University. And we worked together putting together a study on the harmful effects of sex education and things like this. But one of the things that she was working on was this idea of child pornography and its pervasiveness. And she created a study back in the 80s, the 1980s. This is actually what got her at Liberty University. Was she was hired by the Reagan administration to do a study on the prevalence of pornography in the US government. And so she did her study and she did her due diligence. Her background, her PhD is in communications. She studied film and things like that. So she was very well established to do that. And that's what she found was the prevalence of not only pornography, but child pornography in the US government. And they tried to bury her report, and when she wouldn't let them bury her report, they tried to destroy her. And this is back in the 1980s.
Yeah,
Right.
they probably tried to loop it in with satanic panic and all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
Nothing but a major propaganda campaign,
Mhm.
because the
Mhm.
reality is that is very real, and most of those children that were taken by CPS and stuff and have disappeared from the foster care systems either end up with the cartels or they end up with the Luciferian covens. Those are the two main places they end up at. And it's just a sad truth. I mean, that's the reality of it. But of course, if you look at the covens and then you look at the cartels, you can see the interconnections there, since cartels mainly practice in Santa de Muerta anyways. That's nothing more than a heavily Catholic influenced version of Satan. So they're very close ties there. And then when you get involved in the covens, then you start branching out and seeing their connections within the Pentagon, within the government, things like that. Of course, you've seen it make mass publicity over the last number of years. Epstein, the recent stuff with P. Diddy, Jay-Z, Beyonce, and it's a very prevalent problem within the United States, and one that has to be tackled and taken care of.
Absolutely. And I think with with exactly with Epstein, with Pizzagate, with P. Diddy, with all this, there's a level. It seems like there are certain people that they are willing to go after,
Yeah.
but then there are certain people that they're not. And I think when you have an intersection of the Covens and you have an intersection with this, with politicians, because when you look at a lot of these people that they were unwilling to go after, a lot of them have kind of that hushed tones. People are speaking about it in hushed tones. Hillary Clinton, she's associated with Abramoff or whatever that lady was, the artist. Paul, anyways, yeah, Abramovich. And I mean, like the Rothschilds were affiliated with her. Jeffrey Epstein was. You had and some of the art that this woman would create was, I mean, nothing short of demonic. I looked at, like, especially her child art that she made with these demonic looking children. I mean, it made my stomach turn, but I digress. But I really do think this connect, like what you're alluding to is this intersection of these two worlds. And
Well,
if you're
and
in the middle,
the intersection has become flagrant at this point. For a long time, my wife and I, Janice, we've gone to several conferences, Russ Dizdar, L.A. Marzulli, Hear the Watchmen, stuff like that. As a matter of fact, I was running security for Tom Dunn and the people from Through the Black at the Hear the Watchmen conference in Houston a number of years ago. But the thing about it that we noticed is at every conference dealing with satanic ritual abuse, we are finding people that are in the human trafficking field for rescue operations at these conferences trying to learn about it. And it's also the same way, vice versa. When we go to human trafficking conferences, there are people like us that specialize in satanic ritual abuse that are there. And the interconnection has gotten so massive that one of the other ministry groups we work with from A Way Out, they've had multiple victims just in the last few years that show clear signs of dissociative identity disorder and satanic ritual abuse. And it's a prevalent problem to the extent now that they are recognizing it and bringing in people like Janice and myself to help them rebuild their infrastructure so they know how to deal with this from a trauma counseling perspective in order to get these people the help and healing they need.
yeah, and that's good. Um, let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk a little bit about your background, especially centering around the SRA. First of all, there might be people listening right now that don't know what SRA is, or DID. Okay, and I'm sure as soon as you say SRA and DID and you say what those acronyms mean, people will be, oh yeah, yeah. But let's speak a little bit. Go ahead and tell us your background. Give us your testimony in that regard. Um,
Well, I come from the Pillow bloodline, which, if you trace it back and everything, we predate written history. Nobility, I've had ancestors on both sides of my family, the Pillow side and the Sanford side, who have fought in every single major war throughout history. On the Pillow side, we have practitioners going back centuries, of the dark arts, the occult, things of that nature. So it's been passed down as a generational curse, I guess you would say, through that bloodline. Even passed down to my biological father. My biological father shows clear signs of dissociative identity disorder, which used to be known as multiple personality disorder. And my family is very deeply rooted in the Masonic lodges, the bloodlines, and stuff like that. As a matter of fact, my ancestor, General Pillow from the Civil War. The Pillow family, after the Civil War, helped Albert Pike reconstruct the Masonic lodges in America. So my mother was chosen by them because of the bloodline and stuff from my grandfather and my grandmother. Those bloodlines are very sought after as well due to the royalty and lineage and stuff like that that's involved there. And my grandmother, her parents came over here from Germany, beginning of, well, tail end of World War One, right at the beginning of World War Two. So there's that lineage as well. So that's very intertwined, so to speak. I cannot say 100% sure whether my father, after my mother left, was directly involved in my programming. I don't have any clear memories of rituals that he himself was directly involved in. However, the coven that was tied in with the Pillow family did take the lead on that. So ever since I was a child, I was put through rituals, various types of torture, things like that, to cause splits in my personality. And those splits would then be programmed and assigned guardians or demons, if you prefer, that would maintain control of the infrastructure. And the reason why I was chosen for what I was, because from an early age, I showed adaptations and potential in combat. So I was taken, programmed, and used for the elimination and removal of people that would come against that particular coven, whether it would be a rival coven or whether it would be someone involved that was stepping out of line, or even Christians and stuff themselves. I would be activated and then sent out. Even politicians from other countries, including American politicians as well, at certain points in time. It wasn't until I was in my late teens, early 20s, that I even started to question the covens and question the system. And there were some other contributing factors that took place. How can I put this delicately? I was taken into a black mass ritual. My alternate personality, Gabriel, was the one in control, and something they were doing there didn't set right with Gabriel, so Gabriel went after the high priest that was there from the Brotherhood. He didn't make it. So that's when the orders and stuff were passed down to try to eliminate me. And they attempted that the first time in 2005. I did flatline, so in a manner of speaking, they were successful, but I was resuscitated. And they tried again to eliminate me at the hospital, but Gabriel made sure that didn't take place. And they have tried, honestly, I've lost count at this point, ever since then.
I had a question. So I want to go back a little bit. I actually have several questions, but I want to go back to your family. So these are just some of the threads that I'm kind of wanting to tie up, and you can tell me I'm out of place and you don't want to talk about it, and I'm totally fine with that. It doesn't offend me at all. So it was your mom who left, is that correct?
Yes, and the night that
Okay.
she left with me, my father was trying to kill her. So
Okay. Okay. And so your father raised you,
no,
raised
my mother raised
your
me.
mother did. Okay. So that's what I was, because I thought I'd heard you say something about that to that fact at another. Okay.
Well,
So your mother raised,
a lot of this is me putting pieces of the puzzle together. My
Roger.
mother still suffers from severe trauma to this day. I love her to death. I really do. She's a great woman, and she's done everything she could to try and protect me. And I know it upsets her for me to talk about my past and stuff like this, but it's one of those things that people have to know what's going on, what these people are capable of. And she was the one that told me about memories of a ritualized conception that actually took place with a fallen angel. So by me putting the pieces of the puzzle together, I know that my conception was ritual based, that of a quote unquote moon child, right? So everything that I speak on is stuff that I have verified. I don't speak
Okay.
on things that I don't know 100% have happened or did happen. I am active in the Satanic Ritual Abuse community. I have several friends that are survivors themselves and stuff like that. And they have memories of me in certain operations and things that we were sent on in the United States. But I don't speak on those things unless I have regained the memory, been to the location myself, and confirmed that the events happened. Because I told God a long time ago, before I ever started speaking on my testimony, I told God, I said, I never want to lie to your people. So help me to honor that and only share what I know is true.
Hey, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's important for people to hear, you know, that may not have heard your testimony. Um, I know myself, I've heard your testimony about 3 separate occasions. And it just, and I will say this to anyone who's listening or anyone who's watching, this testimony is not wavered in any way, shape, or form. So if you're taken aback by it and this may be something that is hard for you to understand, just know that I've personally verified Jason's testimony with just listening to him, and there's never been a deviation in it. Anytime I've ever heard this testimony, anytime I've ever heard him say this, so I will attest to his veracity in this. As someone who knows has been taught kind of how to tell a lie, or and taught how to tell if someone's lying. I will tell you that Jason's straight up. So I just want to give you that so people need to hear this, and people need to hear that from you. They need that reassurance from time to time, because we're going to get into some stuff that is pretty. There's going to be some cognitive dissonance, for some people listening.
Oh, most
Uh,
most of it. I
yeah,
mean, it's one of those things. It's like I tell people all the time. You've heard parts of my testimony. You've never heard the full thing, because there are things in my testimony that I can't really talk about publicly without the amount of backlash and cognitive dissonance I get from the Christian community alone. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, people go into these realms and stuff all the time, which shout out to my boy Tony Merkel over at the Confessionals podcast, because I love the fact
yes,
that he's not afraid to confront these things and talk about them openly. But it's like the fallen ones, certain of them still walk the earth. There are certain giants still walk the earth. Certain types of cryptids, they do exist and still walk the earth. I can say this not because I have done eyewitness testimonies from people who have survived these things, but because I've seen them myself. I have been face to face with the goddess of witchcraft. I have been face to face with the ladies of the wood. I know these entities exist because I have seen them firsthand, face to face. I have spoken with them. So there's a lot of stuff that is in my testimony that I don't talk about, simply because I know the amount of disbelief that exists in the world right now.
yeah, and that's the whole purpose of the Christian Underground podcast. Is it's threefold. We talk about Christ, culture, and the kooky.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I do that is Christ and culture. I feel like I can speak pretty much with authority. Um, However, the kooky part is the part that I'm still learning. I was brought into the freedom of being able to speak about this stuff about 5 years ago, because I myself, I have been face to face with demonic entities,
Oh yeah.
since I was a kid, since I was 5 years old. Um, that's the first memory I have of it, is when I was 5, coming face to face with a demonic entity. and then having those several demonic entities in my life, and just seeing that progress. And then, but so yeah, and so being free to be able to speak about this, and having that boldness, I think it's coming from what you were talking about, that God is putting his people together.
Yeah.
And we're and Dr. Heiser was a big influence in why I can kind of put a categorization into this. And that was one of the things that he talked about, was the reason why is it's not necessarily so much that Christians have a hard time believing this stuff. Because I mean, we believe in a virgin birth, we believe in the angelic and the demonic. It's being able to categorize this, having a category in their faith, to being able to say that. And a lot of them, for so long, being raised in the Western church, which has been hugely influenced by modernism,
Yeah.
is that, if you can't quantify it, it doesn't exist. Or if we can't quantify it and we can't say that it exists, then we say that, well, it's demonic,
Well,
right?
the Western church itself has a very bad habit of taking God, taking the scripture, and trying to put him in this humanistic box, right? You can't do that with God. He is the Alpha and the Omega. I have laid hands on people and seen them healed. I have cast out demons. God took all of my knowledge from the occult and said, hey, let me show you this from my perspective. And it completely shifted my paradigm, because now not only do I understand the enemy with an in-depth knowledge that rivals most people, but I understand our armor, our weaponry, and what God has given us to deal with these entities, whether they be flesh and blood or whether they be spiritual. And this is something that I understand. It's one of those things that, let's take cryptids, for example. Back in the day, 60s, 70s, stuff like that, you would have the occasional sighting pop up. Usually it was Sasquatch, right? But since then, especially here in the last 15 or so years, the number of sightings and encounters with various different types of cryptids, whether it's Wendigo, whether it's dogmen, whether it's Sasquatch, whether it's these flying creatures and stuff like that, the eyewitness accounts have quadrupled. They have exploded. Now, some of them, sure, it's made up fairy tales that you find on Reddit. But a good portion of them, even if you went on the low end and said only 15% of them are true, that still is an exponential increase of verifiable sightings and encounters with these entities. So it's become something now that you can quantify it.
Mhm.
But as far as a Christian perspective goes, the only way you can quantify it is if you do away with the nonsense Sons of Seth theory, which is a load of bunk garbage. I spent an entire chapter in my book just ripping that theory to shreds, and understand that it was fallen angels that descended upon those women, and that they didn't just stop there. They did it with other creatures and stuff too. Where do you think we get all these legends from? Greek mythology, Roman mythology, the Nordics, Chinese, Japanese? It is all over the world. Even if you go into the Hindu, their ancient history, they spoke of a race of dogmen that were great artisans in weaving silk tapestries, but were also fierce warriors that they would hire from time to time as mercenaries to fight on their behalf. How can you deny historical and modern evidence that can be proven and quantified? You
Yeah,
can't.
yeah, you can. And I think that's why Tony, doing what he's doing, Derek Gilbert, the guys at Blurry Creatures, Chris, Tori, and Mikey over at Camp Hermon. It's why this stuff is so important. And I think that there's why they're having so much success with audiences, is because I think there is a group of people in the church that are like, I've seen this stuff. I know it exists.
Yeah.
but I can't go to my pastor. I can't go to the members of my church and I don't want to go to the witch down the street. I don't want to go to the psychic down the street. I don't want to go to medium because I want to stay true to my faith, but I have nowhere to go to understand what I'm seeing. And I think that's why this is so important and why your story is so important. So the next question I did have was, so Coven. Tell people what you mean by Coven, because when I think of Coven, there's two entities that I think of when I think of Coven. Okay, vampires and witches. Okay, so when I hear that, okay, and one of the reasons why I think of vampires is before I got saved, I toyed around with vampirism. Um, there was a role playing game that my friends and I
Vampire the
got into.
Masquerade.
Huh?
Vampire the Masquerade.
Yes. Yes. Okay. And our coven was a Chicago coven. So we built our coven, we built our story, and we were playing with it, and God got a hold of me. And it was like, no, don't do that. So that's why I think of vampires, right?
Well, and to be honest, it does make logical sense because there are vampiric covens. Uh,
Okay.
just like in vampires, just like with dogmen, just like with Wendigo, for example, you have various classes, right? You have the solo practitioners that dabble in vampirism, and these are usually kids that are obsessed with garbage like Twilight, Queen of the Damned, or Lost Boys, or something along those stupid lines. So they dabble in it. Do they end up getting possessed? Oh, yeah, absolutely. But it's not by a spirit of vampirism.
Hmm.
Those are passed down through bloodline. Uh, Spirit of vampirism is what is the demon that was passed down through my blood. So there was a lot of that in my family. As a matter of fact, that's one of the idyllic factors that made me programmed for what I was programmed for, was because I had that particular trait, that particular demon. So I had abilities and stuff that were very sought after. So the real vampires are made in one of two ways. Either it is a generational spirit that is passed down through the bloodline, or they go through a very, very specific ritual in order to break the human body down to the point that a spirit of vampirism can move in, alter their DNA in order for them to actually house an entity of that type of power, that type of magnitude. So those are your verified classes there. And then you also have the actual vampiric bloodlines themselves that are still in existence, like the Striga or various different types that you find from in the Romanian folklore and stuff like that, because these entities do still exist. But these are ones that are connected to the fallen angels directly. And they are very selective. So you have different types of covens or families that exist within the infrastructure. And they are almost exclusively used as assassins for Lucifer and various intensive purposes. You see the same thing with dogmen. You have three classes of them. You have those that are possessed by a spirit of lycanthropy, werewolves, which do exist. And that, again, like vampirism, is a very specific type of ritual in order to house that type of demon, or it is passed down generationally. Then you have the dogmen that actually exist that are still connected to the fallen one's bloodline, which more sightings of those have been cropping up over the last few years. And then you have the ones that were created via government interference during super soldier programs and such, which those are in existence as well, although most of the sightings of those are in national parks and stuff that house dumps or deep underground military facilities. And then you see the same thing with like Wendigo. You have a person that can undergo Wendigo psychosis, which is a form of demonic possession by this type of demon, where they resort to cannibalism and things of that nature. Then once that possession has taken hold to a certain extent, they start to go through physical alterations, physical changes, supernatural type physical alterations and stuff as well. And they become the Wendigo that you would hear about in the forest. But they're also the Wendigo that are directly connected to the fallen angel bloodline that exist. And they are just there, right? The difference is really the starting, and that's kind of the basic classes of that. I mean, it's just like Sasquatch, you would be more in line with it being a descendant of the fallen ones. They have their own different colonies. And this is also the reason why every single encounter that you read that you can verify, they exhibit different types of personalities, especially like Sasquatch and Dogmen. Some Dogmen and Sasquatch are curious. They don't come across as malicious or want to attack somebody. They're more curious than they are anything else. And in certain cases of Sasquatch, you see some that are even helpful towards humans. And then you come across some that are just vicious and want nothing to do but tear you apart and eat you. Right? So there are different personalities even within these groups. So it's one of those things that to really quantify it and put everything together, there's so much data that you would have to compile and figure out what's what in order to do it.
Yeah. It's pretty intense. I mean, as someone who's getting into that sphere and wanting to take an academic direction with it, because that's my background. I'm an academic.
Dr. Burton.
Yes. Well, we are actually, Dr. Judd is going to be on the podcast hopefully in June. That's when we finally got him, because he is moving right now. And being in Texas, I offered him my truck, but he wouldn't take it.
I'm trying to con him into speaking at the conference.
Well, I hope you do.
I don't know if he can make it in person, but if he could just do like a live stream or a video presentation, I would be happy, because I really want to turn people on to his courses, the stuff that he teaches, and everything else, because they need to understand that from a biblically, historically accurate perspective. And
yes,
he does a wonderful job at presenting that.
Yes, he does. I'm actually taking his preternatural class right now. I'm actually in that, and I'll be honest with you, because of everything I'm doing, I'm taking it. What I love about his course is it's kind of self-paced.
Yeah,
you're in a cohort, right? But it's kind of you're always in that cohort. It doesn't matter. And so, which is really great for me, because it's the first book you read in the introduction is a book by William Godwin, and about necromancy and witchcraft, right? Yes. And it's a history of necromancy and witchcraft. And I mean, it's exhaustive for what Godwin could put together at the time that Godwin was writing, which is right around the beginning of the end of the 18th and early 19th centuries.
Yeah.
So, and Godwin is the father of Mary Shelley. Okay, the author of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
So Godwin he was a godly man, intelligent. I've read a lot of his political stuff, and it's just really interesting the things that he's writing, because I just finished his section on Rome and all that. Anyways, but yes, so if you go out there, look for the Institute of Biblical Anthropology, Dr. Judd Burton. If you are interested in taking on an academic load and really approaching this world from an academic perspective, that's the route to go, for sure. Yeah.
Now to get back on track, ask me about Covens.
Yes.
My ideal definition of Covens is a group of practitioners of the dark arts that are assembled in a like manner or fashion that have something that binds them, right? Normally that is bloodline. They look for specific genetic markers and specific family trees in order to bring people in. Now, there are outliers and stuff that get brought into the covens and drawn in and stuff like that, but the odds of you ever making it to the top ranks or the upper echelon are very slim unless you are a descendant of a specific bloodline.
Right. Um, who are some? Do you mind spilling some of that tea and letting us know who some of these bloodlines are?
The Rothschilds, the Vanderbilts. Oh man, there's a lot of them. Then you go into the Rosicrucians, various bloodlines there, the Freemasons, which actually go all the way back to the Templars. So you have Eric Godfrey and all of those guys that were directly involved with it. Oh man, it is massive. You have 13 main bloodlines, and then you have outliers from there. And the outliers usually come in from either a mixture of the bloodlines or someone that had something that was so rare that they bought their way into the upper echelon. You see that with like the Reynolds family would be a prime example of
Okay. Okay. Is there a particular region of the world that they stem from? Does it take it all the way back to the Middle East? Is it equal? Is it always Western? Is it an equal distribution among
well,
Eastern and Western
it's
families?
really an equal distribution. Even if you go into like China, China would be a prime example. The upper elite, the practitioners of the dark arts and stuff in China, openly claim that they are descendants of the dragon. So you have Eastern bloodlines, you have Middle Eastern, you have Russian, Romanian, UK, American, and the American ones are what's really particularly interesting because some of them can claim 100% pure blood, but the vast majority of us are mutts. You know, it's various bloodlines that are kind of mixed into one another. So America is the most particularly interesting one, but that also makes America one of the most dangerous as far as the order goes. And that's the reason why America, in order for the Antichrist to rise and end time prophecy to become fulfillment, America has to fall. It has to be destroyed.
And do you think that are the Covens part of that destruction? Like, are
Absolutely.
they actively pursuing that?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
You've
I
been
do too.
watching it steadily in the political class of America ever since the assassination of JFK.
I agree with that. As someone who's been in that world, um, the things that I've seen, especially things that I see now, what's going on now, there's just it wouldn't surprise me at all. Well, okay, so we covered the Covens. Okay, so the next question I have, and then this is so one, how did you become aware of Gabriel? Because I know that a lot of DID people sometimes are aware and sometimes they're not. And in that, the sub question of that is, why did Gabriel all of a sudden decide this wasn't something he was down with?
Uh, in '05, the first assassination attempt they made on me, when I flatlined, my spirit was drugged to hell by the generational demon that was in control. So my spirit was absent, but Gabriel and my other altars and stuff were still present. So Gabriel took over. Uh, while I was in hell, I was there for about 5 days. Though, if you've ever experienced hell, you know it feels like an eternity. Uh, Ripped apart, bones shattered, gutted. I mean, it was torture. The part of hell I was kept in was the one that is reserved for idolaters and practitioners of witchcraft. Uh, Christ himself came into hell to bring me out. So once that happened and Jesus had restored me to my body, since he was the one that brought me out, the demons could not follow. So there were no more guardians for my altars that were keeping them in line. So I was dealing with voices. You know, it was like being in a crowded room.
Mm, mm,
Uh, I got saved October of 2005. They tried to kill me in May. So what, about 4 or 5 months?
mm.
Uh, and after I got saved, you know, the voices were very present, right? And I had went to my pastor at the time, which he was a good pastor. Not saying nothing bad against him, but he didn't have a background in, the occult, satanic ritual abuse, none of that stuff. He had no understanding. So he had told me that the voices were most likely demons, and for me to command them to be silent in Jesus' name and all that stuff. So the next time the voices started, I did that. And then one of my altars said, "Shut up." And I'm like, wait, that's not right. That's what, wait a minute. Hey, I'm the boss here. So that made me question what was actually going on. So I started diving into it a bit more, and I had been listening to some of Steve Quayle's older podcasts at the time, and had stumbled across Russ Dizdar, and had been looking into that and everything else. But Gabriel didn't surface until 2014, maybe. It was 2014 or 2015. But it was after Janice and I had gotten married and had moved in here. And one of Wolf had instructed one of his people to call my cell phone and try to activate me. But the activation didn't work. There was no one that could force any of my altars to apply. And immediately after that, Gabriel surfaced and started talking to me. And that was the first one that actually came forward and was willing to have a conversation. And then others started surfacing in line after that, especially after Gabriel actually went with Jesus, got healed, and was reintegrated. Then the other ones started popping up. I had been dealing with suppressed memories in the forms of nightmares and stuff for a long time, until Gabriel actually surfaced. And even then I still deal with flashbacks, PTSD, different altars and stuff at different points in time. But now I understand what it is. I know what's going on. As opposed to when it first began, I couldn't understand it. I didn't know what was happening. So that started my process into verifying what these altars were telling me, the different memories and stuff like that. I've been to the various places the rituals took place at. I investigated each and everything that I've remembered to verify its authenticity. Because that's one of the things that survivors have to be very cautious of. Demons are more than happy to try and mimic a human alter personality to try and gain access to a person. Just as you see alternate personalities that will try and mimic the actions of a demon because they try to mimic what they view as strong, and that's the only thing they've been exposed to. So any survivors and stuff that are out there, I always tell them, like, don't just blab your mouth about something you think you're. Verify. Then once it's verified, then talk about it. Because we need people to know the truth, not woven fantasies.
Well, so did Gabriel ever tell you why all of a sudden that was something, why that triggered him, why
It
he saw
was,
that young lady?
you have to understand what takes place at a black mass.
Mm.
An entire black mass ritual is nothing but the mockery of Christ. They had kidnapped a Christian family of a Christian man that had been witnessing to Coven members and leading them away. So they targeted him and his family. He had a wife that was pregnant, and he also had a daughter who was about 4 years old. They killed him very openly, and his was not a quick death. It was prolonged. It was tortured. It was very brutal. They then brought his wife out and forced his 4-year-old daughter to watch what was going on because they were going to take her and program her. They brought his wife out, put her on the altar, cut her stomach open, removed the child, and then threw it on the ground, only for it to get cannibalized. And then the little girl fainted. She broke. Uh, an alternate personality was going to come forward. At that point, Gabriel said, no, this is enough. And he did it to try and protect her.
Yeah. Mm, that's powerful. I mean, and kind of their weapon kind of got used against them, but there's a part of me that wonders if there was maybe a spiritual component to that as well, where, you know, God was
I'm,
like, nope.
I'm certain that there was, and I wish I could say that the girl was safe and got out, but I honestly don't know. I don't know whatever happened to her. I know what happened to me.
Yeah.
I
Let's
know
talk a little
that.
bit of, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying. I know that there was a lot of contention between Wolf and his coven and the Brotherhood for a very long time because rather than killing me on the spot, Wolf thought that he would take me down and then reprogram me, and that didn't work out the way that he planned. Gabriel took over again and managed to escape. So a few years ago, a new high priestess took over the Brotherhood and reignited their hatred and everything else. So it's been a pretty constant barrage of attacks for the last number of years now.
Hmm.
But hopefully they've learned their lesson at this point.
Some people a little slow on the uptake for sure. Well, let's talk about your deliverance. Because I remember you talking about that on the Camp Herman podcast. And so you go to your pastor. Pastor didn't have a category for it because you know, he's not used to dealing with that. He doesn't have a background in it.
So
Um,
I hold him no personal responsibility for that.
oh yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, I could
he was
imagine
he
being
was
a
a good
pastor and
pastor. To my
yeah, I
knowledge, he's
mean,
still a good pastor to this day.
oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. I could only imagine being in his shoes, you know. And I mean, if you'd come to me 5 years ago before I started getting into spiritual warfare and really giving a study into this, I would have probably been like, "Yeah, you probably need to go see a psychiatrist." Yeah, I would have been like, "You need to get some help." But knowing what I know now and studying what I've studied and still studying, it's like and still learning about, it's like, okay, there's a lot more to this. And I kind of want you to talk about so I really think the ladies that you talk about who helped you through your DID experience and walk you through that. And I don't know if you're still working with them or not.
Too.
Okay. I really feel like they're the people that I heard on Dr. Heiser. Is that correct? Were they
Doctor,
were he
I know they've been on Doctor
Fern and
Heiser.
Audrey?
I know they've been on Camp Ramon before.
Yeah,
Uh, through the black, naturally.
yeah.
But Colleen He or I, I'm not sure how I pronounce your last name. I'm not gonna lie. It's HI, so it's one of the two.
Uh,
But Colleen's been a big help. And then Sherry from Shatter Ops and Russ Dizdar's crew been a massive
yeah.
help.
Well, and I think Dr. Heiser, back when they were on his show, he was trying not to overwhelm them, you know. And so he gave them pseudonyms. And I think he called them Fern and Audrey because those were characters from his book. And they're really special people. So I'd love for you to speak about them and how they helped you.
Well, Colleen and Sherry both are just amazing women of God. And then my wife trained under Colleen and Sherry both. So my wife's been a big proponent of my healing process and stuff as well. So she has.
Uh, I've lost your audio. Give me a sec. It's on. It's got to be on my end, man. Yeah, it's my internet connection. Go ahead and keep talking. See if we're there.
All right.
You there? Yeah,
Yeah,
there
I'm
we
here.
go.
You got it?
Okay. Yeah, it's on me. It's I got wonky internet, so
It happens.
yeah.
As long as we're
All right.
back, we're good. That can be edited.
All right. So go back to the top. Let's talk.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Uh,
all right.
so yeah, it was Colleen, Sherry, and Janice who have been my major supporters as far as the healing process goes. And then, of course, Tom has played a pretty big hand in it. Greg Reed played a pretty big hand in it and stuff as well. But all three of them are amazing women of God. Colleen has a very, very astute understanding of contracts and stuff like that are made during the programming and what has to be broken off and things of that nature. But she also has a very good understanding of what takes place in the astral realm with some of your altars and in the subconscious and everything else, just as Sherry does. And my wife is trained under both of them to really understand what's going on. And God has given her perspectives at times that were really insightful. At one point, while she was asleep, God actually took her into my head, and she saw all the different alternate personalities individually, their appearance, how they carry themselves, and stuff like that. And it was a way of God confirming not only to her but to me as to what was really going on there. And then that sort of stuff has helped Colleen and Sherry be able to help me figure out from time to time what I'm dealing with, what's going on, so we can pray about it and get God involved. That way, the healing process can go about the way that it's supposed to, because each part of a person, the best way I can describe it is this. If you stand in front of a mirror, right, you look into the mirror and your reflection is cast back upon you. That is your soul. Your soul, your body, and your spirit are interconnected. If you take a hammer or a stone and you strike the mirror with it, what happens? It fragments. It breaks. However, if you still stand in front of that mirror and stand in front of those broken pieces that are scattered on the ground, each section holds a part of your reflection in it. That's your soul. That's what happens during the severe trauma that has occurred in satanic ritual abuse and even other forms of trauma as well. It shatters. It's a survival mechanism that your body does. The human mind can only take so much exposure to so many horrific things before it shuts down, before it can literally kill you. So your conscious personality will retreat into your subconscious mind, and a new personality will be created. And that personality will take on that pain, that torment, that trauma, and carry it with it as a burden. It's called disassociation. So it takes a very special type of person to understand this stuff, not just from a psychological perspective, but from a spiritual perspective. Because Jesus is the only one that can take those shattered pieces and restore the mirror to its old form.
Okay. Okay. Well, brother, I'm thankful that those people were brought in your life, because I've heard them speak on a couple of occasions and just listened to them, and just the gentleness that they have in their spirits, and the understanding that they have of the temporal realm and of the spiritual realm, and they are a great resource for people. They really
They
are.
absolutely are. And I can't confirm Sherry just yet, but I can confirm that Colleen will be speaking and teaching at the conference in May. So
Awesome.
if you get to make it, you'll get to see her.
That's cool. That's cool. I really am. I'm hoping I can make it. I will be very emphatic with my bride to let me come. Because now we're going to be getting into the part that, and this will probably, when this airs, this will probably be a two-parter, just so that I can keep it within a certain time frame. But I want to get into it. So let's talk. So you do personal security. Um, you are getting you're using obviously the gifts that you worked very hard to develop, whether they were for good or for evil. At the time they were for evil, but now you're using them for good, which is awesome. Um, and so let's talk about how you got into rescuing um, rescuing people from the Covens, rescuing them from that world, from human trafficking.
That's actually a very interesting story. Uh, I had undergone a divorce from my first wife, and before anybody jumps up in arms and everything, she committed adultery. So, back off. Uh, and naturally, that has a heavy toll on you spiritually, emotionally, stuff like that. And I completely forgot about it because I had signed up for a conference that was going to be happening in Memphis with Russ Dizdar and L.A. Marzulli like a month, maybe 2 months prior to everything that was going on. And, so one day I got this reminder on my calendar on my cell phone that was telling me, hey, you got this conference for like the next 2 days. I'm like, oh, right. Well, I guess I should probably go to that. So I went to the conference, and someone I'd been involved with, I had already been on the trail tracking a coven at that point in time. I now know that it was Wolf and his people. I didn't know that back then because I was providing protection for this woman and her family, because she was a victim herself. Her father was Freemason, stuff of that nature. And the trail went cold. So I'm like, you know what? I need some time off. I need to go to this conference. I need to hear what Russ has to say, hang out with those guys, L.A. Marzulli, all that stuff. So I went to the conference, and I didn't know, but at the time, but my wife, Janice, my wife now, was one that actually put the conference on. And at the time, she was doing human trafficking outreach work under her 501c3 at the time, which was Memphis Mission. So we got to talking, went to lunch, hung out with Russ, and we're having conversations, hanging out, getting to know each other and everything else. And I learned from her that they were just going out there, no security detail, no one that actually knew how to operate a firearm or knew what to look for as far as potential threats went. So I had offered my services. I told her, I said, well, look, I'm tracking someone in this area anyways. The trail's gone cold. Why don't I come on board and help you out with security and stuff like that? And one of these girls might actually put me back on the trail of the people I'm looking for anyways. So that's kind of actually how that got started.
Hmm.
So I started doing that and working with her group and providing security details and stuff for them while they were out, doing trafficking work and everything else. And then a couple of years later, she had introduced me to another friend of hers, AC Curtis, who was running Express Missions International. And he mainly dealt in overseas operations for child and human trafficking rescue work. So me and him got together, and we started working with his group and really just expanding out from there. And then some stuff happened, and Janice just let go of her 501c3. So I was helping AC and them out for a while. And then some stuff went south with Express Missions International. So I took about a year off or so, just kind of regroup, figure out what the next steps were. And then I decided, not done with this fight. Neither one of us are, me nor Janice. So we started going at it again and kickstarted Archangel Ministries, which is what we are now. And so we are currently a subsidiary of Liberatum Ministries International, which is licensed via AC and whatnot, but there's some internal stuff going on right now. So Archangel is actually going to be its own standing 501c3 from now on. So that way we can keep going in the direction that God leads and takes us in. So That's the reason for the conference that's coming up. That's the reason for everything that's going on right now. We're trying to
Awesome.
make sure that we're established, well connected, and that we have teams all over the U.S. as well as the 11 countries we operate in outside of America.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's good stuff. So let's talk about a standard operation. We
Yeah.
don't have to go into specific details. I think there are people out there that would be really interested in knowing how it goes down. So walk us through inception, research, prep, action
Well,
in
the
the
biggest thing is for operations gathering of intelligence. Creating target packages and people we need to stake out, stuff like that. And believe it or not, the vast majority of that information actually comes from doing outreach. Because when you do outreach, when you're taking gift bags or backpacks that have supplies, vitamins, food, hygiene products, stuff like that to these girls and stuff that are out on the street, and you start witnessing to them, eventually they start to realize that there's someone that cares, someone they can actually trust. So eventually they start giving us information. They were at this party, these people were there, and they were selling children, 5 years old to 12 years old. And just from that little bit of information, it's like, okay, well, I have people to look into. So on top of us continuing to work with her, trying to get her to the point where she's said, that's it, I'm done, I want out. That means we also have new intel on people that we can track and look into and do some digging on, because that is conception. And then the next phase is going to be your intel gathering. So we do a lot of digging through various means and sources, whether it's through stakeouts, whether it's through tracking, whether it's through digital, online, ethical hacking, checking out their Facebook stuff and everything else. So we do that to create target packages, right? And then once we have the target packages and stuff enough, we start tracking them and start gathering evidence. And once we have enough evidence, a combination of physical evidence, video, audio recording, stuff like that, we then will approach, depending upon what it is we're dealing with, what county, what state, that kind of stuff. We will then reach out to contacts we have in local law enforcement or even state law enforcement, and start giving them stuff to pique their interest. Look, we've got this going on. These are the people involved. We can prove all of this stuff. Will you back us? And 9 times out of 10, they'll say yes. They'll open up a case and we'll start working with them directly. And then at that point, we start doing actual targeting of the individuals. We find out who they are, where they're going, where the transactions are taking place, where the people are being sold at. And once we have all of that gathered, we make a phone call and we move in. And we usually move in right alongside law enforcement, and we are moving in tandem with them. We go in, we rescue the victims, they make arrests, they bring them up on trial, bring charges against them, and that's how we successfully shut down networks.
Awesome. Well, and I think, people need to know that that people are out there that are doing a lot more than just, collecting money and sending care packages. You know what I mean? Like that there are boots on the ground people. I think that's one of the reasons why the movie Sound of Freedom was so resounding, was with people, is people wanted to know that there were abolitionists that were out there that were fighting against this slavery, that were fighting against this, this modern day slavery, that people were taking action and doing it, but doing it within, the framework of the law, and doing it with our founders, but or with our with not with our founders, but with our police department. But So let's dive a little bit more into, and we'll start wrapping up here in a little bit. But let's dive a little bit more. So you talk about tracking, and I mean we understand, at least some of us in this world, we understand OSINT, we understand digital footprints,
Yeah.
with the ethical hacking, but the when we're tracking, like when you're tracking, are there signs that people can see in their communities? Like if they're driving along and it's not a woman standing on a sidewalk, basically with a guy, halfway down the street, that obvious signal, and for some people don't know that, but the obvious signal of a woman being prostituted. But are there other signs that people could notice, maybe in the news or driving around, that maybe if they saw that, it would at least let them know, hey, something's going on here.
Oh yeah. Well, most naturally. Uh, I always tell people keep a very close eye on like crime rate and stuff in your area, right? If violent crime is on the rise, then I guarantee you prostitution and trafficking are coalescing right in line, guaranteed. Most of the trafficking stuff now, since COVID, they've moved a lot of it from your standard, red light district or the track to digital. They book everything online, do the appointments online and stuff like that. So there's a lot of it takes place online and whatnot, which you see it all over social media and you see it on various platforms, even things with items for sale, right? Uh, and you have to really read into this stuff because it's in the description. It's just not blatantly out there. It's like a few years ago, I was messing around on Wish app when it was, very popular. And I came across this Witcher medallion, right? And it was the same nickel plated nonsense that you see for like $5, but this one was $2,500. And in the description, if you read into it carefully enough, it was talking about a young boy that they were selling. So that stuff does exist. You come across it on places like Amazon and stuff like that. I came across one last night. I was looking at compensators for a 9mm pistol, right? And one of them had a picture of a compensator that I'd seen two spaces above it selling for $30, but they wanted $2,000 for this. Reading into the description, it was a young girl they were trying to traffic. So it does happen. So there's certain things that people should be on the lookout for, because it's not just limited to these Chinese things like, Wish or Temu or whatever the newest trend is. It's all over the place. And then it's also like that out on the streets too, though the signs are different. Out on the streets, you look for signs of distress, signs of trauma, fear, that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response, because they're going to be in that fawn response or the freeze response. One, their head's going to be down. They're not going to be making eye contact. They're going to be fidgety, nervous, and there will usually be some larger man or something that is close by, even though they're not in the same spot or the same aisle. That's what's going on. And sometimes the best thing you can do is to walk up to that girl and ask if they're okay. Because you can get a lot more out of her response than just sitting there saying nothing. And sometimes the person that's trying to kidnap her or traffic her will make it painfully obvious by trying to confront you over it.
I remember when back in the early 2000s, I was working for the Boys and Girls Club. And this was when my eyes was open to a lot of this. And you and I were talking about this earlier, off camera or off recording. And the thing was, where I was living, or where not where I was living, but where I was working, was kind of the red light district for Arlington, Texas. And there was a woman across the street who owned a quadplex, and she ran a brothel out of the quadplex across the street from the Boys and Girls Club. Um, and I started putting two and two together. No one had to tell me anything because you saw men coming and going at all hours of the day, different men. None of them were the same. None of them looked like they lived there. They were only there for a couple hours and they'd leave. Just all the telltale signs. Something's
Yeah.
going on there. She's either selling drugs or she's selling people. And then she kept her girls in one of the downstairs. Because her main home was, or her main operating facility was upstairs, and then she kept her girls downstairs, and then the girls worked at the local strip club too. Um, and but if you would drive down the street, there would be, women prostituting themselves. And I remember one time I was just driving down the street and I had my window down. It was a beautiful day. We don't get many of those in Texas. you know, Beautiful day. I wanted my windows down. Big mistake in this region. Learn that you don't drive around with your window down in a red light district. Uh,
It's generally a bad idea.
yeah, not a good idea. And so I'm driving and I pull up to a stop sign and there's a lady there and she starts propositioning me. And as she's propositioning me, out of the corner of my eye, I see a gentleman walking this way. And luckily, I was just like, no, I'm good. Thank you. And I pull away. And as I'm pulling away, he starts yelling at me. And I'm like, okay, now I get it. That's the pimp. That's the trick. And we're going on our way. Um, is Last question, and then we'll start wrapping it up with letting you kind of let people know about the conference, letting people know about how they can get a hold of you, how they can support you in your mission. Last question, and it goes back to the Covens. We know that the Covens are part of this realm, right?
Yeah.
We know that they're trafficking humans. We know that they're trafficking people for organ harvesting, for sacrifices, for the adrenochrome,
Oh, yeah.
and then also just profiting off of it. Are there signs that, like, because as someone who has a background in working in gang intervention, gang prevention, I can recognize the signs of gang involvement in a region.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I can see it. I can drive into a neighborhood and I know which set is in control. I know when MS-13 is moving into a region.
Yeah.
Are there signs that we can tell that a coven is operating in that region? And if so, what are those?
Most absolutely. Uh, Part of it is going to depend on your spiritual sensitivity. As a way to tell, your spiritual discernment, stuff like that. Things are not going to be the way they were. It's just like here in Memphis, the moment you drive into Memphis, you feel this spirit of oppression. And that's the principality that's been placed over this area through territorial reclamation rituals that they do. Actually, let me elaborate that on a little bit. A territory ritual, basically what they do is they will get together on a high ritual date that usually requires sacrifice, be it animal or human. And they will prolong the torture process in order to draw in as many demons as possible. Kind of like setting off a flare in the middle of the night in the pitch black, right? See it, you're drawn to it. That's the way demons are. So they will summon as many demons as they can to a ritual site. And then at the close of the ritual, they will end the sacrifice and they will release those demons over an area for them to go out and influence people and to manipulate people. This is called territory. This is a territorial ritual. And then apart from that, they will also do another ritual for a veil of secrecy or a veil of shadow. And a lot of times with these demons, there will be a principality that is going to be over in that region. So once you start feeling that shift in spiritual, essence of the area you're in, there's going to be a coven in place. And at that point, you better be up on your spiritual warfare, and you need to have a team that's backing you that knows how to pray against this stuff and is good at it. You need to start driving the city, praying over the city, and targeting the covens directly. Another telltale sign and indicator is a rise in violent crimes. Whether it's carjackings, muggings, murder, rape, any of those things, those are a direct tie into the demonic territory summonings and stuff that they're doing. That's a direct correlation, a direct influence of the demonic on the physical. Those are the two biggest indicators you have a coven operating in your
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because everything you're saying, I mean, it's exactly the same as if, MS-13 moves into a region.
area.
Because when MS-13 moves in, you start seeing some pretty horrific things, and there are a lot of people that don't realize, that some of these horrific murders that they're seeing rise in their communities, that's usually a sign that, yeah, they're there and they're moving in. And a lot of times when they first move into a region, it's them just, it's their calling card. It's letting people know, hey, we're here. Yeah. So that makes sense. That makes sense. All right.
Apart from
Well, hey,
that,
go ahead.
I was saying that apart from that, keep an eye on your local politics, sheriff's
Hmm.
department, mayor, city council, that kind of stuff. Start looking at the type of people that are trying to move into office from there, because they're going to be directly connected to the covens, or at least being paid off and influenced by them.
That's good. That's a good sign. All right. Well, I think I definitely want to have you back on. Maybe we can schedule something
Happy.
for after the conference. Because I'd definitely kind of like to do a conference wrap up with you for sure. And just kind of talk about the conference and how it went and stuff like that. But definitely want to have you back on, and have you regularly on. Maybe we can do some kind of report, where you can kind of report things that are going on, you know, things that you're seeing, things like that. Because I want people to be aware of this stuff, and I want them to know what's going on in their communities, and being able to speak about it and be able to speak with intelligence about it.
Oh yeah.
And if they go to their local police department, I want them to be able to know how to approach their local police department, where their local police department will respond, where it's
Period.
not, oh, this is crackpot Judy coming in, and we, blah blah blah. But we'll move into that. You and I will talk about it. We'll get that scheduled. So let's let people know, how can they reach you? How can they find you out there? How can they register for the conference? And what are some of the things that you're working on? That kind of stuff.
Oh man, I'm working on a lot. I am trying to finish my first book right now, which is Arise the Night, which is on the healing process for severe trauma, satanic ritual abuse, and dissociative identity disorder. But it's not just the healing process, it is also going into spiritual, mental, and physical combat, to make sure that the person that is recovering and healing knows how to protect themselves from predators that are seeking to take advantage of them. The entire goal is to take a Christian and give them all the tools they need to be the warrior in Christ they're supposed to be. And I'm trying to get that finished and wrapped up in time for the conference, but we'll see how that goes, because there's a lot that goes into publishing and all that crazy stuff. But you can get access to the book and the chapters. I've got about 6 chapters I have to upload right now on the website, actually. So to reach me or communicate with me, you can go to the website. It's archangelministries91.com. If you're looking to reach out and contact, figure out how you can get involved or volunteer, we have a Contact Us tab right at the top of the page. The conference itself, Originally, I got to say, it was just going to be a training seminar for the volunteers and stuff, but God saw fit to change that. Now it is a conference and training seminar. The first 2 days, the 18th and 19th of May, are the conference. The following 2 days, the 20th and 21st, are for training. And the guys from Russ's old team, Shatter Ops, are actually coming. They're going to be there. They're going to present, and they're going to be training people as well. We're going to be there. Ryan, my partner, is going to be talking about traditional human trafficking and what Archangel does in that field. I will be teaching on an introduction to Satanic Ritual Abuse and Dissociative Identity Disorder. Then Colleen is going to be there. Vicky Joy is going to be there.
Our favorites.
Yep. Tom Dunn is going to be teaching. I'm not sure he's going to be able to make it physically or not just yet, but either way, even if he can't make it physically, he wants to live stream a presentation to teach up there. The guys from Shatter Ops naturally are going to be speaking and teaching. Greg Reed originally said he wanted to speak and teach at the conference, but since he had his accident, my main concern is him getting healed. So once we get closer to the conference, if he's feeling up to it and he wants to be there, then he'll be there. And I'm also working on getting Judd Burton to speak up there, and then Kenny C is going to be hanging out with us and teaching and stuff as well. The goal for the conference is to expose the body of Christ to as many different fields that the enemy is operating in as possible, and get them to network together and build strong teams and communication all across the U.S., regardless of what ministry or field they go into. Some people might go into cryptids and helping people out there. That's perfectly fine. Some people want to go into the trafficking aspect. Awesome. Some people want to go into counseling or healing or understanding, like what Vicky teaches on, or music theory and how harmonic frequencies and stuff play into it. Whatever ministry they choose to go with, I want them to have connections in all the other ministries. So whatever problem they face in the field, if it's not something they specialize in, they know somebody that does.
Amen. Amen.
And then next 2 days, the training. I said we're going to be going over everything. We're teaming up with the guys from Shatter Ops for teaching and instructing on everything from outreach to investigations to counseling to security teams. We're covering the whole span of that. And then another friend of mine, Jason Windsor, I think is his last name. He works with Tom's daughter, Evangeline, and he's going to be speaking at the conference, and he does pro-life and deliverance. So he's going to be teaching up there, and he's also going to be training people as well that want to get involved in the ministries and stuff that he works with. So yeah, there's going to be a whole lot going on. It's going to be a blast. And we have 3 different ticket packages right now. You have the basic package, which is $60, and that's just the conference. Then you have the VIP package, which is the conference. They also get a t-shirt with it. And they also get to hang around for the Q&A that's going to be at the end of the conference, where people in the audience can actually ask questions of the speakers and stuff that are actually going to be there. That one's going to be $90. And then we have the Warrior package, which covers the conference, t-shirt, the Q&A, plus they get to stay on and train with the ministries that they're wanting to sign up with, and get that firsthand one-on-one knowledge from some of the best people in the field for the following 2 days. And that package is $115.
Well, that's great. And I highly encourage everyone who's listening and everyone who is watching, if you've got the means and you can do it, and where is the conference, by the way?
Conference is going to be in one of the little subdivisions of Houston. I believe it's called Spring, because it's
Spring Branch.
Spring First Church is where it's going to be at. So that's the area you're looking for. And we have a link right on the front page of the website, archangelministries91.com, where you can read about the conference, the different ticket packages, and click the button. It will take you directly to ticket sales.
And if someone can't come to the conference, but they want to support you financially, do they have the ability to do that?
Yes, we have several options on there. We have ministry partner packages, which one is $50 a month, the other is $10 a month. And then we also have a donation button right there on one say it's top right hand of the screen where people can just donate directly if they want to.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Jason, man, I just love having you on. You are doing God's work, that is for sure. And I'm so thankful that, you know, you're here and guys like you exist. But with that, man, we're gonna put an end to this session. We will schedule you for a new session here coming up. So with that, guys, I want to thank everyone for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Like, guys, serious about the comments. Make sure you're commenting. Put some comments down there. I will also be including Archangel's website on the show link and on the show notes, so that way you can have that. But with that, may God bless you. May He keep you. May He shine His countenance upon you and give you peace.